Is there truly a more beautiful thing in this country than Maction? Because this weekend we got some Maction happening. And as it's the Buffalo Bulls, they are making the trip to the plains of Kent, Ohio, and they're going to be taking on the Kent State Golden Flashes for a noon kickoff game over on CBS Sports Network, where the Buffalo Bulls, fresh off of their first win of the season, they had a competitive game against Minnesota back in week number 1 before really taking their frustrations out on, I believe it was St. Francis, was who Buffalo played. And Pete Lambeau, generally in the first couple of games of the year, shows that he's going to come in, he's going to punch you in the mouth, and he's going to try to do it over the course of 60 minutes. And we're talking about a Buffalo team that is genuinely pretty good at running this football. Even in the loss to Minnesota, they found some rushing success, coming in the top 40 in the country in rushing offense with over 200 rushing yards per game. That's a team that definitely knows how to run that football regardless of who's up against them. Meanwhile, on the opposite side, the Kent State Golden Flashes, they're simply looking to reset their culture after they fired Kenny Burns a few months before the season even started in the first place. And while this team is better than last year, to the point where we may be talking about Kent State not being the worst team in the conference, I think there actually might be a couple of teams that are worse than Kent State. In spite of those things happening, both the model and FanDuel, and we'll go ahead and pull them up here right about now. Both entities have Kent State as a heavy underdog. Our internal metrics are a little bit nicer. Kent State is listed as a 2 touchdown underdog at 14.5. FanDuel is even more egregious. We're talking about Buffalo being a 21.5 point favorite. So with the margin being so wide between these two teams, normally what I like to do is talk about two teams and talk about both teams and really talking about the keys of the game. But because Kent State's margin is so damn high, I really wanted to look at this from a different different kind of lens, right? Is it possible for Kent State to pull this upset off? And if so, what would need to happen in order to have that upset occur and Kent State being able to defend their home stadium and get their first FBS home win in at least a couple of seasons? So let's go ahead and explore that. And I think at the end of the day, you're really looking at 5 factors that need to happen. I think all 5 of these things genuinely do need to happen in order for the upset to become possible. First of all, the turnover margin is going to be a major key, right? I'm not talking about like a +1. We're talking about Kent State's going to need to win this turnover margin really by multiple entities, right? We're talking about +2. If you can get higher than that, that would be great. You really want Buffalo to play a sloppier game. The offense for the Buffalo Bulls, obviously they thrive off of having offensive balance and being efficient, being in those second and manageable and third and manageable situations. So if you're Kent State, you need to force multiple turnovers and ideally creating short fields for yourself. It's one thing to force a turnover maybe on your side of the field and at least stall the momentum of the Buffalo offense. But really what you want to do is you want to really try to create it in Buffalo territory so that you're starting essentially in field goal range and giving yourself a short field so that you don't need to go too terribly far in order to get points up on the scoreboard. Even better, if you can get a defensive or special teams touchdown, that would be a bonus. And I think, to be honest with you, I think Kent State maybe is going to need a touchdown, either from their defense or their special teams, in order to pull this off. Speaking of the offense for the Golden Flashes, it kind of leads into my second point that I have, and I think that does need to happen, is really lean on tempo and creating misdirection and really testing the eyes of the Buffalo linebackers as well as the Buffalo secondary. In a straight up rock fight, Buffalo is going to be Kent State in the trenches. Buffalo is going to have an advantage with their offensive line, and it's going to be the same way with their defensive line as well. Just Buffalo is going to have an advantage in the trenches. I think that's going to be crystal clear from the get-go. So, your Kent State, you need to be able to spread the field, get that quick passing game going, really incorporate like several different types of screens and jet sweeps and, maybe even run that read option a handful of times too, to make sure that one, the Bulls are not able to focus on one person and force them instead to focus on different personnel throughout the course of the play. In that way, keep that attention off of one person. And then really, if you're one of the playmakers on the outside for the Golden Flashes, because of the fact that realistically your quarterback might not have too much time to get the ball off, you're going to have to try to make some yards. You need to get some get some yards after the catch. That's how you need to make things shake. In addition, if you get into the red zone, you got to finish drives with touchdowns. You're a free touchdown underdog, or in the case of our internal metrics, you're a 2-touchdown underdog. Stalling in the red zone for field goals is simply not going to cut it. It's not going to work. So, unless you're in a 4th and long situation in the red zone, you got to be aggressive. You got to go for it. You cannot come out here. You cannot play scared at the end of the day. And your red zone opportunities, you got to come out with touchdowns. You cannot settle for field goals. Unless it's a 4th and long, that's one thing. But if it's a 4th and manageable, I'm talking about 4th and 5 in the red zone, you got to go for it. Be aggressive. Play to win the game. Obviously, special teams is going to matter here. Getting a punt block, fake field goal, a long kick return to flip that momentum is going to be important. But then also, if you're Kent State, you got to control the game script early. The first 15 minutes of this ball game is going to be so important for the Golden Flashes if they want to even be competitive in the first place. If Buffalo is able to jump out to a 14-0 lead, Golden Flashes are going to be cooked. It's going to be a long day in Kent, Ohio. We might be seeing a splattering in action to get things rolling. But if Kent State can score first, maybe get an early stop, and then drag Buffalo into the mud, quintessentially, turn this into a mud fight, the pressure would shift on Buffalo. And the longer that Kent State maybe doesn't have the lead, but they keep it close, keep it in a margin of 7 to 10 points, then you create more doubt within that Buffalo sideline. And mind you, if a quarterback on the opposite sideline, Quan Robinson, he hasn't played a ton of football. He was backing up Avery Johnson and Will Howard at Kansas State, but he hasn't played a ton of ball at the same time. So if you can turn this into a mud fight, you could certainly create some pressure, and we will really test the composure of Quan Robinson at that point, and now we have ourselves a legitimate game. But even with all that said, do we think the upset actually happens here? We talked about the ingredients to make this upset happen, but does it actually occur though? And I don't want to come out and say that the Golden Flashes have absolutely no shot to win this game, because Idaho State earlier this year nearly pulled it off on UNLV, and they were an even heavier underdog than what Kent State is going to be this Saturday. But with that being said, as long as Buffalo shows up as a focused team, I do think the Bulls are going to roll into the plains of Kent, Ohio. And frankly, I actually do disagree with the assessment of this ball game. I don't see it being as close as what the model is predicting. So the line's at 21.5 for FanDuel. I actually think Buffalo does cover that. So I'm going to go with Buffalo winning 38-14. But very fascinated to see if Buffalo comes in as a focused team, or maybe they look at this as a little bit more of a look ahead spot, because of the fact that they are, for the most part, they're going to be playing tougher opponents as action drags on throughout the course of the regular season.